Okay, hello guys. Welcome to our series of webinars by University of Technology and Applied Sciences, Ibri, Oman, English Language Center. Welcomes you all from everywhere. And I can say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For today, our guest speaker is from Brazil, Andy Hadland, and I want just to come close to him, introduce him to you. So Andy Hadland is a Chevening alumnus, Master in Science in Psychology of Education from University of Brussels, and NFE bilingual program mentor for SPOT education. He's also a representative of Brazil TESOL, Minds, Brain, and Education Special Interest Group, MBE6, and a guest lecturer in postgraduate courses on multilingualism, global education, and neuroscience. His blog, edurocks.com, has been accessed more than, wow, 40,000 times by people from more than 160 countries. He uses Instagram, so you can add him or follow him at edurocks to host monthly lives about how neuroscience and psychology can be applied in the classroom and interviews teachers from all over the world. So let's clap, clap, clap to Andy Hudland and the mic.
Thank you very much, Faisal. It's such a pleasure for me to be here connecting with teachers from different parts of the world. So while you were introducing me, I was reflecting on which time zones I was able to reach this year with my work, and then a couple of months ago, I taught some teachers 3 hours ahead of me, and then 4 hours ahead of me, and then 6 hours ahead of me. And then maybe 2 months ago, I was teaching some teachers in India who are 8.5 hours ahead of me. So this is the first time that I get to 7 hours ahead of me, which means that whatever I'm doing here has some value to teachers around the world. So it's a great pleasure for me to join you today. I would like to thank the university and especially Faisal for helping me organize this. And let me start sharing my screen with you. And I'm just going to ask you to try to keep your microphones off so that we can have a smooth presentation. And of course, at the end of this session, hopefully, we'll have some time for questions. I hope everybody can see my screen. Yes? So let's do like Faisal did. If you can see my slides, just type 1 into the chat box. Or yes.
But like me. One.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Big
wonderful,
one.
wonderful. Big one. So everybody can see it. Excellent. Let's start. So today I'm going to address this issue here that I think is really relevant, especially after such a problematic year that we've been through. Online tools and the science of learning. So, and I can tell you from the start, I'm not going to give you any, magic formula for you to revolutionize what you do in the classroom, because I think, it doesn't work like that. But I'm going to invite you to reflect on the role of teaching, especially remote teaching and the tools that we can use. But more importantly, what we can do with those tools, some of the tools that we already know. So, most of you are probably using those tools already, but how do you use them in a way that is science of learning friendly, let's say, so that your students may have better learning outcomes, right? Like Faisal mentioned, you can find me on social media. So you can follow me on Instagram, EDC Rocks. You can also access my website. I have a blog there, and I normally write about neuroscience, psychology, and things that you can do in the classroom. And also, LinkedIn and Facebook, and I'm all over, even Twitter, if you use Twitter. Now, what are we going to address specifically, step by step? So we're going to talk about the notion of innovation. Then I'm going to show you some of the online tools. What are the 4 pillars of teaching online? Soul, science of learning. And finally, some metacognitive strategies. So strategies that help us think about thinking or learn how to learn, right? Now, first of all, what comes to your mind when you think of innovation? So I would like you to type any word, anything that comes to your mind in the chat box so that I can see some of your answers there. What is innovation to you? So I'll give you 30 seconds. And don't be shy. Okay, Mihai, Gabriela, Isabella, creativity, new idea. Miss Heba, ability to think out of the box, revolution, Chetna. Yes, I like all of those answers. Great. Now I'm going to show you what some of my teachers, I mean, some teachers around the world showed me. They actually, we did a word cloud. I think you're probably familiar with this tool, Mentimeter. I think you probably have used it a couple of times with your students. And one of the things that they said, just like Mihai mentioned there in the chat box, is that innovation has to do with creativity. So you can clearly see right there in the center, creativity. Creativity, progress, technology, development, some other interesting words. And I think we can all agree that for you to, make something new, you have to create something original, or to change the way people use something, you need to be creative, right? I think somebody has their microphones on, so maybe if you can turn off your mic, that would be great. And then that brings me to this man who unfortunately passed away, I think around 3-4 months ago. And I don't know, maybe all of you have heard of this man, have seen this man. His name is Ken Robinson, and he is very influential, or was very influential. He unfortunately passed away. He has definitely impacted my career as a teacher because of this TED Talk. Does anybody remember what is the word missing there? Do schools kill? I'm pretty sure some of you have watched this TED Talk, right? Yes, exactly. So you know Ken Robinson, and you know which word is missing, and the word is creativity. And again, so innovation has to do with creativity. And he defines creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. And that's very important. So we need to be able to think outside the box, like you said there, to be able to come up with new things or new ways to do things so that we can make progress, we can advance. And are we doing that? Are we creating the new? I'd say not so much. And let me try to explain why. So how do we create the new? If you look at this picture, the one on the left, you will see some men, some very famous men for their time and even today, who were attending a conference around 100 years, actually more than 100 years ago in the United States. They were invited by this man in the middle, G. Stanley Hall, who was the president of the University of Clark at the time. So does anybody know who that man is? The man on the left holding a cigar and a cane, very famous for his area. I think a lot of what we do today in terms of therapy and psychology, psychiatry, we owe to this man. Does anybody know his name? If you know, you can use the chat box. I'm really testing you today. Dr. Osama, thank you very much. It's Freud, exactly. So this is Sigmund Freud, the father of modern psychiatry or psychoanalysis, or whatever you want to call it. And he was invited many years ago, 1909, to attend a conference He was actually the keynote speaker of the conference in the United States at the University of Clark. And you can see that in the middle, you have the guy, the man who invited him, G. Stanley Hall. And on his left, so to our right, we have Carl Jung, who was one of Freud's disciples, one of his students. Of course, they had some, they had a quarrel. Actually, they disagreed on certain things, but still, they worked together. And if you look at the picture on the right, top right, you will see that I got from a movie that portrays what was going on at the time during the conference. What do you see? You see a man and he's standing behind a desk. And there's a blackboard behind him, and you see a bunch of other men right across, in front of him, looking at him, listening to him, because he is very important. He has a lot to say about psychoanalysis. And that happened over 100 years ago. And then if you look at the other picture, bottom right, you have my teacher, my professor Joe, at the University of Bristol. So this picture was taken a little over 2 years ago. And what do you see? Do you see anything different? Well, I see a woman and she's behind a desk and there's a board behind her and you have a bunch of people right in front of her listening to her. I think the biggest difference that we can tell, yes, Woodland Road, yes, is that there's more technology. We have a projector, we have, a computer, and we also have more women in the crowd. So that's basically, the biggest innovation, which is, great, of course, but still the way they are teaching is very similar. So have we created a new? In over 100 years, the way that we teach has remained basically the same. We've just included technology. And that makes me wonder, because I think a truly innovative teacher creates innovative students. And if Freud has been teaching or had been teaching for many years, and then everyone else who came after him just basically replicated what he did, as my professor's professors, because she had classes, somebody taught her, and then she probably did the same thing that they did to her and that people did to them. So are we innovating? Are we creating? Are we creative? That's a very important question for you to reflect on, right? Now, how tech savvy are you? Because, okay, so if innovation requires creativity, and today we are, we were sort of born, the new generations were born into this technological era. Do you know how to use technology? So I want you to use the chat box again and give yourselves a grade from 0 to 10. So how tech savvy, how well can you use technology? And again, 0, you live in a cave, you have no electricity, you don't know anything about technology. 10 is a bold one. 10 means you can hack, NASA or, or the Pentagon or something like that. Some people are 9, not really tech savvy yet, still learning. 6, digital immigrant, exactly, Dr. Ozama, yeah, 7, good. So, most of you are tech savvy. You're at least, above 5, which is good, right? Do we have to be tech savvy to work with today's students? Well, I believe we have to start asking ourselves the question, what is technology? What comes to mind when you think of technology? And again, I'm going to ask you to use your chat box so we can interact a little more. What is technology to you? What word comes to your mind? What definition? Let's see. Digital tools, okay. Innovations, yep. Life, interesting. Platforms, okay. Coding, yes. They are all great answers, excellent. So if you think about technology, what comes to my mind when I think of technology, I go back to the root of this word, technen, from the Greek, which means a way, a manner, a fashion, a way to do something, right? And logi has to do with the discourse of, or the study of something, right? So it's the study of a way to do something, basically. And that brings me to an episode of my life that took place around 2 years ago, little more than 2 years ago. I was invited to be one of the panelists of the EdTech conference in Sao Paulo. For those of you who don't know Sao Paulo is one of the biggest cities in Latin America, the biggest city in Brazil. So it's a hub for all kinds of conferences, right? And this one, by chance, is the biggest ed tech conference in Latin America. So education technology. They invited me to be on the panel, and I couldn't tell why. So, okay, I think somebody needs to turn off their microphone. Yes. All right.
Education technical.
Yes. Just turn off your microphone, please. So that we, yes, better now, I think. Anyway, so they wanted me to be on the panel because we were discussing lifelong learning, the use of technology and everything. And I was the only one who was not directly involved in ed tech. Hello? I think, yeah. Can you hear me, everyone? I think I can hear somebody dragging something. Yes. Okay, there you go. So all of those men there, they were in ed tech industry. So they were, creating new technologies, and they were, selling products and everything, like virtual reality goggles and everything, gamified platforms. But then I was the one that they decided to report when they published their, so there was a report that came out about the conference, and they used something that I said to depict what happened there on the panel. And then I I talked about basically three things: inovação, so this is in Portuguese, criatividade, and tecnologia. So they are all Portuguese words, and I'm pretty sure you can tell what they are because they're cognates. They come from the Greek or from the Latin. And you can see that innovação is innovation. And inside that word, you have nova, which means new. Criatividade is creativity. And then the root of the word is to create, cria, to create. And tecnologia means technology. And then you have right there, techno, comes from the Greek, a way, a tool, a fashion. So technology to me has to do with a way, a tool to create something new, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be anything digital, anything technological in the terms that we know the word today. Something in the cloud, or an online platform, but it has to be a tool or a way to do something new, to create something new. Because technology gives you access to content, because nowadays we can access anything we want through Wikipedia, for example, even though a lot of professors do not advise students to use Wikipedia because we never know if the references are actually accurate. But anyway, we can know, if we want to know the name of the first president of any country in the world, we can go to Wikipedia, we'll find that information. If we want to know, for example, a historical event, when it happened, who was involved, we just go to Wikipedia. If we want to know the name of a chemical substance that only exists in a particular part of the world, we go to Wikipedia, or Google, or any other search engine for that matter. So technology gives us access to content. It also gives us access to people and places, because right now I'm here in my home in Brazil, and I'm talking to people from India, from Oman, from Pakistan, from everywhere, which is wonderful because we can exchange experiences, we can talk about our realities, we can learn from each other. But we can also visit places virtually nowadays. We can go to places using Google Maps, for example. We can take virtual tours inside very famous museums around the world. But before we had this, online virtual technology, think of the wheel. The wheel gave people an advantage to reach new places, right? Think about the airplane. Think about things that came before this digital era. They also gave people a way to create something new, to go further. You also have access to development. As teachers, as educators, that's what we're looking for, right? We're trying to make sure that we do our professional development, that we are learning new skills and new content. So we're doing online courses. We're coming to webinars like this one through technology. Now let's see if you were really paying attention to what I said. Do you remember the three things that I mentioned that you have access to with technology? Let's see if you can still remember. It's December, you are tired, you've been teaching too much. Great content, yes. What was number two? Do you remember that? Let's see. Dr. Ozama got the first one. Oh, I have new messages. Yes. Content, great communication, places and people. Zahida, yes. And the last one, development. And if you put them together, like Nashra wrote there, content, people and places and development, their initials form CPD, which is what you are supposed to do, continuous professional development. So hopefully you remember that technology can give you access to continuous professional development, right? Now, what are the four essential pillars for anybody teaching online? Because suddenly, if you are like Brazil, we just had to transition from an all face-to-face, exclusively face-to-face presential class, that you were right there in front of your student, just like Freud, just like my professor, to an entirely online environment. And of course, a lot of people didn't have the skills or the competencies to do that. So it was a struggle. It was very hard to adapt. But then if you think about the four essential pillars of technology, digital technology in this case, for you to teach remotely, things can be easier. So the first pillar is you need a virtual learning environment, a VLE, which can be sort of like a learning management system, right? An LMS. And there's so many examples there that, I'm not going to tell you now because I'm going to test you again, but it's a place where you put things, where your students will access the materials, they will communicate with one another. It's their virtual class, basically. You also need a video conferencing tool, just like this one we're using, so that you can connect synchronously with your students. Some video conferencing tools can even record the videos like this one is doing. And then that means you need a video and audio editor. So if you want to work with your students asynchronously, that they can access the material later, and then they can re-watch as many times as they want. And you also need some sort of collaborative work tools so that students can work together, because now all of them, they were in their place, in their houses, right? They were separate from one another. But in the classroom, we get them to work together in pairs, right? In trios, in groups. We need to keep that alive in the remote teaching environment. So we need to have some kind of tool they can use to collaborate. Now let's test if you know. Okay, first of all, I'll give you 10 seconds to memorize 1, 2, 3, and 4. 10 seconds, starting now. Okay, great, hopefully. And what I want you to do is to match, okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4, the 4 pillars of teaching online with these tools that I selected here. So I'll give you some time to try to connect them. So this number 1 here, which one is it? Is it pillar number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4? So you can use the chat box to try to guess. Yes, I can see some people are writing now. I think Chandra Sekar, if you can turn off your microphone, please. Yes. Okay, there you go. Excellent. Yes, some people are writing here. 1 matches to 4, 5 video conferencing tool using technology is fun, efficient, and effective. Yes. Proving to be a modern teacher. Excellent, excellent. So yes, let's try to correct, shall we? So we have the first one, Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Slides, and Google Forms, right? They are collaborative working tools. So they belong to category 4, pillar 4, right? And it's funny because it probably happened there because I think it happened all over the world. If you are using Google, there was a glitch. There was a big one yesterday and people got desperate because for a couple of maybe hours, they were unable to use Google tools. So imagine what would happen if suddenly Google, Microsoft, and other big Silicon Valley companies stopped working, right? Edmodo.
Hello,
Anybody?
Anita. Millie here.
Hello. Just, yeah.
Endeങ്കിലും പറഞ്ഞോ?
Can you turn off the mic, please? Yes, somebody's speaking. So Edmodo is, hello, who's speaking? Edmodo is a learning management system, so you can use it as a virtual learning environment, very much like Facebook. So you can actually add things in a sequential manner, like a wall, like a feed, right? And then you can assign homework, you can work with deadlines and everything. So that's definitely number 1, pillar number 1. KineMaster and WavePad, so 3 and 4, they are video and audio tools, editors. So you can make videos, you can cut them, you can edit, you can add subtitles if you want. WavePad is more for you to work with sound, right? With audio files. So you can create music, or you can even create a podcast or something like that. And Zoom, I think everybody knows Zoom. Zoom is a video conferencing tool just like this one. And you can also make videos using Zoom, right? You can make them, you can edit them. So what was the thing that I said during the EdTech conference that they decided to use to report what had happened? I said, so this is what they printed there, and they said, they got one of my phrases, é preciso aprender a aprender. Afirma especialista da National Geographic. So basically they said, we must learn how to learn. We need to learn how to learn. I was a consultant for National Geographic at the time, and we've been talking about technology, all of us, but they decided to report that specific sentence, that, quote, something that I said, because that's truly innovative, right? It's not all the technology that they were showing us there, which is wonderful, really. But what's really innovative is if we can keep updating and learning by ourselves, and with others, but finding different ways to learn, no matter which tool we use. And that's very innovative. So it's not just using technology for the sake of having technology in the classroom, right? It is using technology for a purpose, because there is a goal, there's an end goal that's going to help you connect with your students. And that brings me to the science of learning. So what is this idea of learning how to learn? That's what the science of learning discusses. So the science of learning is an umbrella term that we've been using quite recently, I have to say, to discuss areas related to how we learn, that investigate, that do research on, brain, for example, function and mind and things like that. So I want you to use the chat box to mention, have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of this umbrella term, the science of learning? Have you ever read anything about it? Have you ever watched anything about it? You can use your chat box there. Yes, a lot of people. Dr. Osama, Rommel, Chetna, great. I can see now that we have a little over 120 participants. That's wonderful. Vandana, excellent. Learning theories with Vygotsky, right? Excellent. So yes, you have learned, so you have definitely heard of the science of learning. And the science of learning is part of what we do with the Mind-Brain Education Special Interest Group here in Brazil. I'm one of the representatives. I'm based in the Midwestern region here. So we have our leader, Mirella, who is in São Paulo. We have another member, Rodolfo, who is also in São Paulo. And what we do, we promote events that will bring some experts or some people who have something to say about how the mind learns, how the brain learns. So you can check the Brastiso YouTube channel, Brastiso on YouTube, and you'll see our latest event was about the social brain. And then we have another one about the evolution of the learning brain. So please do check, very interesting, a lot of great tips for you to apply with your students. So you will probably have heard of other related areas like educational neuroscience, neuroeducation, psychology of education, that's the one that I studied, or educational psychology. They all want to know how we learn. So we look at, the cognitive sciences that are investigating what is cognition, what is thinking, what is memory, what's attention, what about emotions. All of those things are very important for learning. They are at the heart of learning. So we have to understand some basic principles so that we can teach more effectively and our students can have better learning outcomes. Now, what can I tell you? Finally, I can give you some tips using the tools and using some, I call them metacognitive strategies. They're not exactly metacognitive strategies. They are more like science of learning strategies, but I call them metacognitive because metacognition has to do with learning how to learn, right? Thinking about the best way or the best techniques, the best strategies I can use to learn. So that's why I want you to remember this word, metacognitive or metacognition, and ask yourselves, are you a metacognitive teacher? Do you reflect? Do you rethink the things that you're doing in the classroom to try to, make your students achieve better learning outcomes? Because that's what a metacognitive teacher does. And the first tip I can give you, the first strategy is called spaced repetition. And if you want to read this paper, this is the reference there, Weinstein, Madan, and Sumeraki, the teaching of the science of learning, or teaching the science of learning. And they talk about 6 strategies that we could use more often in our teaching practice. So the first one is spaced repetition. And this, we kind of know, it's very intuitive. If we want to learn anything, it takes time to settle in the brain, in the cortex. So we need to, respect that. You cannot just assume that because I taught my students a lot of content today, they will have learned. Not at all. We have to keep coming back to it. And one way we can do that is increasing the space between the last time they saw something and the next time they will see it, when they do a revision, for example. So let me show you an example, a practical example with an online tool. I'm sure you've heard of Google Classroom. So you can use Google Classroom, Canva, Moodle. There's so many, right? Edmodo, like I showed you before, even Facebook or whatever, to help your students do that, spaced repetition. So let's assume you taught your students something that they don't like very much, like conditionals, hard, third conditional or something like that. So you taught them today, and then you want them to really learn. So what could you do? You could go to classwork, create an assignment, and then you can use the due date here for them to guide themselves. When do they have to revisit this topic? If they learn today, it's a good idea for them to revisit tomorrow, a couple of days after, maybe on the weekend or on Friday, and then the next Friday, and then at the end of the month. So they will revisit the same topic with different activities, but it's the same topic, third conditional, 3, 4 times or 5 times. And each time they revisit, they increase the distance, the time between that session and the next one. That's good for their brain. That's going to help them retrieve, or that's going to help them consolidate that memory much better, in a much more effective way. But do we do that? I don't think we do that systematically. You can use a tool to help you. The due date, the deadline can pop up as a notification. You have to do the second review session today. And then a couple of days after, now you have to do the third review session. You can program the virtual learning environment or your learning management system to do that for them. And if you want, you can even access the Google Classroom group that I created. This is the code, and I added a couple of things about teaching asynchronously and synchronously. So you're welcome to join. Okay, if you didn't get that, I'll send you again at the end of the session. Another strategy that we can use is called interleaving. And interleaving tells us that alternating between subjects or tasks can improve learning. So instead of learning or working on topic A for many hours, A, you can do A, B, or A, B, A. So you alternate between subjects or even tasks. This works, particularly, especially if you're studying for a test. We normally, if we have a test tomorrow and we have to study today, what we do is I'm going to try to, study all I have to about this one particular subject so that I can move on to the next one. That's what we normally do. Instead of doing that, one thing you can do, you can use a Pomodoro timer. And I think I probably have the real one here with me, a present from my wife. So this is the Pomodoro timer. You can set the timer to 25 minutes. That's what we call one Pomodoro. And then when you hear, the bus, you stop for 5 minutes. And then when you come back, you do another 25-minute session. The first session you do about topic A, stop for 5 minutes. The second session you do about topic B, or you change the way to do it, right? And then you do that for about 1 hour, or 2 hours actually. Do 25 minutes, 5, 25 minutes, 5, and then 25 minutes, 5, 25 minutes, 5, and then you take a bigger break, because that's good for your brain, Interleaving works really well. We normally do the opposite. We stick to the same thing for a very long time. We get mentally exhausted. It doesn't work very well. Okay, so let me take a look at the chat box. Does that make sense to you? Yes. Asthma, wonderful information, good technique. Yes, Quizlet, I'm going to talk about that one home. Excellent, There's the theory of interval learning, exactly. Ihor, yes. So when you're doing this interleaving, one of the greatest things that actually will help you learn is that I did 25 minutes of, let's say, third conditional. I stopped, and then I'm going to do 25 minutes of the vocabulary that I have to use for the test. And then I stop for 5, and then I go back to third conditional. When I go back to third conditional, because I spent 25 minutes doing something else, I have to retrieve that information. I have to bring that information consciously to my working memory system so that I can use it and, work with it. We call that retrieval practice. And this is very good. This is the effort to bring information
to your working memory so that you can use it for whatever you have to do. And this effort is good. It's like going to the gym, you know, like working out. You know that it's working if you feel a little pain, you know, if you struggle a little, because it's actually, you know, doing what it's supposed to do. That's good. We normally try to simplify or to facilitate things for our students, but this effort is very important. Retrieval practice. And somebody said there, somebody used there, you know, this tool. I'm sure you have used this tool many times, and this is a great tool for you to do retrieval practice, because you create flashcards, and the flashcards will have a cue, could be an image, a question, word, or anything, and the answer is where? On the back. So you look at the cue, you try to remember, try to retrieve that information, and then you check yourself, and you check, oh yes, I got it wrong. So I'll try to do it again in a couple of minutes, or maybe tomorrow, right? I did it right. I got it right. So I don't have to worry so much about this particular flashcard. This is a wonderful tool. So you look, where are you from? Basic students, they look at the flag. I'm from Brazil, I'm Brazilian. You're working with countries and nationalities. A lot of flashcards are done for you. You just have to find them on Quizlet, and you can make your own flashcards as well. Right? Great. So far, so good. Now, the next strategy is called dual coding. I don't have to spend a lot of time here because this is very simple, very intuitive. It's better to use both images and sounds than just one or the other. That's why if I were delivering this talk without any slides, and you just had to look at my face and, you know, my hands and everything, and I didn't have anything to show you, you would, I'd say definitely not remember as much as what I'm doing now. So I am showing slides, showing pictures, I am talking to you, I'm explaining things. We know that. That's intuitive. That's important for our students, because our brains will encode information both visually and phonologically, so that we have a bigger network to find that information in the brain, in the cortex of the brain, right? So that's why we have to use images and sounds. One way you can do that using an online tool is with Microsoft Teams. It's with Zoom. So you can create your own conferences, you know, new meeting, and you can definitely, you know, make your own videos. They can be short videos instead of just talking at your students, you know, recording your voice. Show your slides, share your screen. So this is one thing that you have to do more often. Share your screen, because one of the things I've seen teachers do all over the world is that they just talk at their students. They're not sharing anything. So we don't have any images to fall back on, to use as reference. So that doesn't work as well as if you have both, right? Now we're coming to the end of the strategies that I selected for you. And of course, we can have some questions, but two more strategies. And this one is very important, elaboration. We understand that the first time we are exposed to new information, we create a very sort of shallow network or representation of that new information in the brain. And then we have to consolidate that. That takes time, right? Because we have to sleep. A lot of learning happens when we're sleeping, when we're consolidating new information. But we also have to think deeper. We have to add neural hooks to that, so it doesn't stay at the shallow level. So we have to try to make it more elaborate, right? Asking questions, increasing, because that will increase memory consolidation. One way you can do that with a tool, ever heard of Padlet? So let me take a look at the chat box. Have you ever used Padlet? And there are so many other tools that you can use as well, right? So what do you do with Padlet? Yeah, some people are saying yes, yes, yes. So basically what you do is you create some, you know, Padlets there. I think you have If you have the free account, you can have like 4 or 5 or something like that. And they're basically a big canvas where you can add all kinds of things. So you can, when you click on the plus button here, you can add a link, a Google search, a snap, a film, a voice, a screen, a draw, whatever. So when I was working on essays, dissertations, compositions, whatever, and I really needed to learn, I used Padlet to add links that I found, to add images that I found, to add even podcasts that I found. And that's exactly what your students can do. They have just learned about something, put it on Padlet, and make sure that you add as much as you can so that you can make that, the representation of that knowledge or that new information, deeper or bigger, larger, so that you have a more elaborate network in your brain, right? You don't have to use just Padlet, you can use whatever you want, really. And finally, the last one, so we can move on to, a few messages and questions. Concrete examples. Now, have I used any analogy? Have I used any concrete example with you today? Let's see if you were paying attention. They help reduce the cognitive load, and thus they will increase your memorization, your consolidation. Is there anything that I chose to use, a real situation that actually happened, that actually took place, for you to try to explain something? No? Does anybody remember? And you can use the chat box. Yeah. 100 years ago, Mr. Jabez. Yes, exactly. What happened to the lecture? That's perfect. So that's the analogy that I chose to use with you, because then it's easier for you to connect, There's somebody that you heard of, Sigmund Freud, a lecture. I showed you a picture of my professor. So that's a real concrete example. And that makes your brain at ease, or, it helps your brain reduce the cognitive load. If I only speak in abstract terms, I can very easily overload your brain or overload your working memory system. And that will normally cause students to stop paying attention because it's too much for them. And if they're kids, they will start misbehaving, right? So you can use analogies. You can give, real situations, concrete situations, things that have happened to you, create a narrative. How do you do that? Using an online tool. I'll give you 2 tools. If you want to do it in a more static way, you can use this web design tool that is great called Canva. So you can have your students create posters of whatever they have learned using wonderful design that they can find for free through this tool. But it's static. If you want to give them more emotion, for something that actually moves, they can create animations using Powtoon. They can create props. So, they can tell a story using Canva or Powtoon, a concrete story, a concrete example. You can do that when you're preparing your things, your lessons, so that you can narrate what's going on. That's a wonderful resource that we have to use more often. Now, this is, basically coming to an end. And I just wanted to, I hope those tools, those strategies were useful. Like I said, they're not exactly, the latest tools, because they are aligned with the 4 pillars of remote teaching, like I said, like I told you before. But they are being used in a different way. They're being used in a way that is in tandem with the science of learning. They're connected, because I do think that true innovation is not about finding a new tool to do something old. It's about using any tool, old or new, to do something entirely new, something groundbreaking. And to help us illustrate this, I read a couple of months ago, it was, sort of the middle of the pandemic in Europe, the first wave, this very interesting story of a teacher from the UK living in Italy with his family. And he asked a question. He is also a reporter. he asked the question to a head teacher in Brindisi, former deputy education minister. And he basically said, a child of 15 has far more creativity than we have. Every time you give them the freedom and the tools to create something, they will astonish you. And I like very much that he mentioned Maria Montessori up there. Maria Montessori was an educator that definitely made a huge contribution to our notions of learning, of exploring the environment, of letting kids free, walk free and try to use different tools to understand the world. And that's what we have to do with technology. We have to give our students voice and choice so that they can work on their own projects, right? And that's what Sugata Mitra did. I'm sure Sugata Mitra is very famous there, especially because he's from India. And he used to be a professor of Newcastle, University of Newcastle. And he did an experiment in the 90s where he put computers connected to the internet inside a wall, and he just left them there. And suddenly kids came and they started messing with the computer, and they learned how to use the computer on their own. They even accessed the internet to create cartoons and to know more about Disneyland because they were in rural India. They had never heard of those things before, right? So unsupervised groups of children can use the internet to learn anything by themselves. I do believe that. I do believe that we have to have frameworks, guidelines, a curriculum, but it has to be flexible. And that's what technology can help us do. That's what I did. It got published in the Teaching Speaking second edition. I even wrote about that for my blog. So I wanted my kids to learn how to tell the time, how to ask time. What time is it? Instead of just, doing what we normally do, which is use the book, use the board, whatever, I had my students draw a map, a world atlas, so that they could learn about different time zones. Like I said, I'm teaching now, and you're 7 hours ahead of me. So maybe my students didn't have that knowledge. And then I connected my students with people from different parts of the world through my cell phone, and they had to ask the time. So I called a friend in Wyoming, the United States, another friend in Washington, D.C., another friend in Stuttgart, Germany. Can you turn off the microphone, please? Yeah. So another friend in Iraq. And then they were asking the time. They asked the time, what time is it? What's your name? They introduced themselves. And then we made a clock. So we used the paper plate to make a clock. We used an eraser, some cardboard to make the hands of the clock. And then they had to show me the time on the map they had drawn. Hello, I think somebody's is with their microphone open, so it's a little hard for me to hear you. So just turn off the microphone, please. Okay. And then they had to compare two different time zones, Brazil and the person they had talked to. Do you think it was effective? I think it was a great experience. The only
Hello? Andy, can you hear me? Where is he? Can you make
Is he not a presenter?
Yeah, he is not a presenter.
Come on, and he's not a presenter.
Okay, I think I was muted for the last minute, right? I hope you were able to read the quote from yes, okay, great, from Sir Ken Robinson. I was muted, I think probably because somebody was speaking, and then anyway, now you can hear me.
Andre, could you hear me? Could you hear me, Andre?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think the time is over.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm obliged to mute all because some people don't listen. We ask them to mute their mics and switch off their cameras, but some of them do not listen. So I'm obliged to remove them. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
What happened, because I didn't set you as a presenter, so I can use mute all. It's not a mute all. I can choose. There is an option. Don't allow people to unmute their mics. But if I do it, I will. You will definitely be muted.
Yes.
Okay.
No, that's fine. But I think everybody could hear most of what I said, right?
Okay. If you want to repeat it again, but now I think that we'll open the floor for questions.
Yes, definitely.
Guys, you can write the questions in the chat box, or you can unmute your mic and then you can ask your question to Andre.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Faisal. Yes, Piyush, you said you could hear all except for the last minute. I'm very glad. The last minute, I was just basically reading Sir Ken Robinson's quote, okay, about flourishing. Yeah. Any questions?
I'll try to switch. I switch off the camera because some of participants do not listen to us. Because
okay.
One of the participants, asked, can we see the presenter? Now you are here.
Yes, I am here. Where can we find the recording? I'm not sure. I think you have to ask Faisal that.
Okay. Well, we'll try to send the recording by emails.
Yes. Great.
Okay. Any other questions? Can you see the questions? Any other questions?
Well, can we see the presenter? I can hear. Any questions related to my session? You know. Thank you a lot. Thank you, Salam.
Okay, guys. I want to. Okay, because we closed the pre-registration form because we received over 400. You have big fans, Andre, everywhere.
Oh, thank you very much, Faisal.
We closed
Wonderful.
it. I closed it like by 11 Oman local time. Now I will open it again. I will leave it here in the chat box, please.
Sure.
Do not leave the session, please. Just.
Yes. Well, maybe I can try to answer Piyush's question about kinesthetic learning. Yes. How to engage kinesthetic learners more in the online scenario. First of all, Piyush, we, in neuroscience, we do not have evidence to support the idea of learning styles, okay? Which doesn't mean that you should discard everything that you've been doing, all right? We understand that from the complexity of how the brain works and how interconnected the brain is, there isn't one predominant style that helps you learn better, even though you might have the impression. This is a false sense of competency, of fluency that we have. You can take a test. Maybe you will be categorized a kinesthetic learner or a visual learner or an auditory learner. And then you believe that you learn best in that specific way. But then when we put you in a group with other people who have the same learning style as you, we give you input and we test you at the end. The evidence is really clear. You do not get any advantage by being taught in a specific learning style because the brain benefits from multiple styles, let's say, right? So everybody benefits from visual input, from auditory, from kinesthetic, everybody. And then of course, that means that it's not just kinesthetic learners, but how do you engage learners as a whole in an online environment when they cannot move, right? I'd say the simple thing you can do is you can have them move. So if I'm teaching and I want my students to, I don't know, if they're kids and I want them to learn the colors of the alphabet or whatever, or an object, I ask them to go around the house and find that object and bring back to me, right? That's something that you can do easily. If you're working with teenagers or young adults, you can have them change rooms, for example. Sometimes I know that they don't have this option in the house, of course, but then you can have a brain break for 2-3 minutes, ask them to stand up and stretch or change the angle. If they're sitting next to their desk looking at the wall, have them sit closer to the window. So you can do a couple of things to have them move around a little bit because that benefits learning, right? Okay, I have some other questions here, if I may. Let's see. Yes. Yes, Faisal?
Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah. Can we have a list of technological tools or applications? Yes, if you want to, I'm going to share with you here. I wrote that exactly session is basically the same ideas on my blog. And I even added a couple of other tools that you can use. So let me just paste there the link. So this is the link. I just pasted there in the chat box.
You can.
And you can read. Yes. Wonderful.
Any other questions?
Yeah, let me check here. Well, thank you very much, everyone. They said it was a very useful session.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think. May I ask?
Please, yes.
Just I want to ask about something important about adaptation of teaching material or textbooks that we teach. That.
Yes.
I think that you have an idea about this.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, we are teaching pathways. Okay, and I think the same thing, same situation in your country, but there is no any adaptation for that we can use this material for online teaching.
Yes.
And it would be a big burden on the teachers, on the lecturers to prepare at least 5 or 6 hours for this. And we try to send feedback to the owners or the writers just to, if they can adapt it or make something material or like supplementary material we can use it for online teaching.
Exactly. Wonderful.
Without changing in the outcomes or whatever. So what do you think, Aaron?
Yes, that's a great question, Faisal. I think I've been involved with publishers, ELT authors, National Geographic Learning especially, but I know a lot of people who work for Oxford University Press, Cambridge, Macmillan, Richmond, Helbling. I used to be a library coordinator in charge of ordering the books for all the students. So I've worked with all different publishers.
And I hear that you are a reviewer, I think.
Yes, I have reviewed a National Geographic Learning book called Look for Young Learners, right? And one of the things that we know, unfortunately, is that I think they feel like their hands are tied in many respects. For example, there are areas in the world where there's no electricity, no technology at all. So they have to make the book an all resource in its own right. So it's basically with the book, we can teach the entire course, even for those who have no access to technology, sometimes to electricity, right? And for, from a publisher's perspective, it makes a lot of sense then to standardize books so that they can sell the same book, they can print the same book all over the world, right? But then there's a problem. And the problem is it's not adapted to the new reality of digital technologies. And how do they normally try to solve the problem? They create their own online platforms or their learning management system, if I may, with homework and online activities and things like that. But still, it's their own, right? It belongs to them. It's not really integrated to much better online tools that are also in the market out there that we use more, often. So I think their challenge is to bridge the gap. I think they have to make, so one thing that I think they could do that would cost a little bit more maybe, include some ideas of how to adapt the activities from the book using online tools that we have access to, that are not really part of their online portfolio. Like if you get a National Geographic learning book, normally your students will get their student's book with a serial number so that they can access the platform and use whatever activities they have on their online platform. That's great, wonderful. But what we want to know is, how can I use activity 2A on page 13 in a more digital friendly or online friendly way that we don't have on their platform? So they have to have a booklet maybe, or they have to include in the teacher's guide an idea for us to adapt that to the new reality for online or remote teaching. So asynchronously, for example. So how can we do that so that we don't have to waste all that time to rethink how to adapt the book? I don't think this is, I mean, now with all the pressure of the pandemic, I do believe that publishers will start rethinking how they, especially print their teacher's guide so that they can include some more, let's say, brain and online friendly strategies to adapt their activities, because that's more than necessary nowadays, right?
Okay, thank you. I think there is Zahida raised
Yep.
her. Do you have questions, Zahida? So you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes.
Zahida,
Zahida,
can you hear me?
please.
Yeah, she raised her hand. I don't know if she has questions.
Okay. Okay. While Zahida decides, I can answer Ihor's questions. You've shared a number of ICT tools with us. Thanks a lot. You're welcome. But what is your take on being digitally ecological? And so digitally ecological in the sense, let me see if I got this straight. I think we have to be wary of how much technology we use, what kinds of technology we use, because a lot of learning happens through social interactions, right? And that's exactly what we have to be afraid of and scared of, because with the pandemic, we have actually increased screen time for a lot of kids out there, kids who are very young learners, who are supposed to be exploring the world, but then they have to use tools, online tools to connect them so that they can keep education alive. But what kind of education? This doesn't work very well from a brain perspective. So I think, and also we need to use technologies that exactly, Ihor, not every learner can stay for hours in front of the PC. That's exactly what I meant. I think that we need to be more flexible with the curriculum and with what we have in terms of, options. So for example, instead of watching too many videos all the time, and why don't we assign homework that has our students do something in their own homes, like, start gardening. So I have a bunch of vases here with plants. So maybe we are talking about food. We're talking about, food vocabulary or whatever. And instead of just watching a video of people preparing something, learning the vocabulary, you may even record yourself showing different types of food. Have them do that. Have them teach their families how to cook something using the ingredients and speaking English. Because then, yes, using a project. Yes, exactly. And I feel like we are pressured into using new ICT tools. I also feel that. But again, technology and innovation, they don't always require something new, a new tool, but a new way of doing something old. And you can use any tool for that. You can use an old tool, a new tool. But I try to encourage everyone to have their students stay off screen as much as they can for homework, for projects, for whatever, because staying hooked on the screen for a very long time is not good for their brains. So we have to try to do that, especially for young learners. So they can do things with the Montessorian method is excellent for that, because they have to work with their motor skills when they're, as they're growing older. And one of the things that we can do, we can have trays, sensory trays. So you can put some, different types of objects or materials with different texture that the students have to touch, So you can have marbles, you can have sand, you can have whatever, instead of just, having them watch TV or watch you through the screen all the time. So you give your parents, your families, the ones who are, who have enrolled their kids in your school, give them the instructions and have them do that with them. Involve the family so that they can stay off screen. Yeah.
I think the Homraj from Nepal raised his hand. I don't know.
Yeah,
Homraj?
please.
Homraj?
Yes, me here.
Yeah, hi. How are you?
Fine,
Hello.
fine.
This is Homraj from Nepal. He present a lot of time with
Homraj
us.
from Nepal. Thank you.
Yes, sir, may I give some compliment on the presentation, right?
Sure.
Okay, first I would like to congratulate for your innovative presentation and to all the scholar and educator using, delivering the session about technological online tools for teaching learning process in the technological period and pandemic situation. So what you presented there is so nice and wonderful, and then so beneficial for educator, teacher, and then a scholastic person, especially learner as well, on this
Thank you.
situation. But one thing is that technology is kind of depend on practice and preparation long time. But our teacher, scholar don't like to play with technology all the time. How is it possible to implement technology education in our education sector? That is the case, right? One thing.
Yes.
Next thing that yes, we have just heard the messages from technology, but never gone practice and presentation. And kind of in tactile learning is less yes considered over there, right? For the purpose,
Yep.
technological yes application just for the conversation, interest, interacting and share ideas. Not go and practice till now in my practice experience in Nepali context, because I have
Yes.
been working in these technology areas and conducting a Moodle and LMS system for conducting trace in independent situation. I have found such a teacher, and this is the case, and I will found around the world, right? So
Yes.
what you tried, what you attempted to give the message to motivate to our teacher and to go to join and to feel the technology environment, that is so interesting, beneficial. I hope a teacher will be, yes, surely be motivated and intrinsically yes, move ahead and to use technology for better education. That's my yes understanding of presentation. Thank you for your valuable time for sharing information, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Homraj. Yes,
Yeah.
very interesting comments and questions. And I believe that there are two things we can take from what you said.
Yeah.
How do you get teachers to step out of their comfort zone and use more technologies and try to be motivated to engage their students with technologies, but also at the same time, technology is not always the answer. Digital technology. So how do you use digital technology to have students do things that do not require digital technology, so that they can actually do, like somebody said, kinesthetic tasks?
Yeah.
So the first thing that we can do as in my case, teacher trainer, I try very much to make my teachers reflect on the role of technology and what technology has become for the new generations of students. It's a language for them. They were born into this digital era. And if we're not speaking their language, the language of technology, how can we ask them to learn English, the language that we speak? How can we ask them to step out of their comfort zone and learn another language if we are not willing to learn the language that they use, which is technology? So we have to implement in teacher training programs, sessions about how to use new technologies. And it doesn't have to be anything too fancy, too sophisticated, the latest development. It has to be based on the 4 pillars that I gave you. You need a virtual learning environment, because you have a place, right? An LMS. You need a video conferencing tool. You need to be able to edit audio and sound, basically, and video. And you also need a place where they can collaborate, which could be part of the learning management system, right? If you learn those things, I really think that you don't need to learn so much more than that, especially for older teachers who are probably very uncomfortable with the new situation now. They are very far away from their comfort zone. And then so far that it actually makes them frustrated. Every day they wake up with this terrible sensation that they cannot deliver the lesson because they haven't learned how to integrate technology into their teaching. But again, I say, so why did we let this happen? What happened? Why didn't we integrate more technology into our teaching over time? But then again, how can I use the technologies to help my students do things in their community, in their homes, so that they stay away from digital technology as much as they need? That's a big challenge. Yeah. Yeah. It is a big challenge, right?
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. Any other questions, guys? So if you have questions, okay, guys. Because some of them ask for re-recording, you might find the recording here. Maybe we'll make everyone accessible for the recording. Now, for the certificates, just give us 5-6 days. Business days, we'll try to send it, but please try to fill in the registration or attendance link form. I already posted in the chat box. And also you need to fill the feedback form about the webinar. Okay, any other question? Okay, here.
Yes, I think I just wanted to mention, Monica said that older teachers can work with younger teachers. Definitely. I think we should be planning our lessons together more often. We should have a lesson planning task force at the university, the school, wherever you work, because we can have more ideas together. And I feel like we're not doing that very often, right?
Can you show the contact information of the presenter again? Thanks.
Yes, if you want, I can. Let me share my screen so you can all take a picture of this last slide with my contact information right there. So yeah, this is Instagram. This is my website. And if you use this hashtag on social media, you can see some of my posts. All right.
Okay, guys.
Yeah. I think no more questions.
Yeah, that's what I see. Okay, I would like to say a big thank you for Angie. Just we wake you up early. Thank you for great presentation. And I would like to say big thank you for everyone from everywhere. I don't want to mention countries because I don't want to forget any country. As I told you, really, we have big fans from everywhere. We have already got over 400 people, participants registered with us. That means they are very
Yes.
interested to join your session. Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much. And please clap, 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 200.
Thank you very much, Faisal. Thank you very much, everyone. You know where to find me. You can send me a message if you have any questions.